Hello and welcome to this first video in a series about dealing with anxiety from a biblical perspective. In Genesis 12, Abram moves to Egypt to escape a severe famine. What happens next is fascinating. Beginning in verse 11 we read, "As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, 'I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, "This is his wife." Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you.'" What is Abram doing here? He's imagining a worst-case scenario, creating a hypothetical future and a terrible problem. Does that sound familiar? I know it does to me. I often feel chronic anxiety about a situation, but when I look at that anxiety, I realise that I'm not actually anxious about the situation I find myself in. I'm anxious about a hypothetical, worst-case future that could result from that situation. This is what psychologists call catastrophic thinking. Let me give you a couple of my own real-life examples. Number one of my children has a minor disagreement with a friend from school via text message. Number two, I immediately begin to worry that the minor disagreement will grow and fester into something bigger. Number three, I imagine my child being rejected and bullied in school by this now former friend turned enemy. Four, I imagine reporting the bullying to the school, but the school not putting a stop to it. Number five, I imagine taking my child out of school and sending them to a new school. Number six, I imagine the new school also being a setting for bullying. And number seven, I imagine homeschooling my child and begin to worry about their future prospects at university, given that they were homeschooled. Or perhaps you can relate to a story about health. Number one, I have a slight pain in my side. Number two, I immediately assume I have cancer. Number three, I imagine I'm going to go through painful treatments. Number four, I imagine those treatments will be unsuccessful and I'm going to die, leaving my family behind without me. And I am not joking. This is a tragic but common experience in my life. How about you? Can you relate? Well, Abram did something similar. Number one, we're moving to Egypt. Number two, men will want to take my wife Sarai as their own. Number three, these men will conspire to kill me to take Sarai. Number four, Sarai must pretend to be my sister. The common theme in these scenarios is very important. The anxiety is not based on reality, it's based on this hypothetical future, and that hypothetical future requires numerous stages of things going wrong for the anxiety I fear to come true. This is a totally irrational way of thinking. Not only that, but the thing I am worrying about has not even happened. In fact, the thing I'm worrying about is many stages away. Here's a great extract from an article I recently read. 500 years ago, Michael de Montaigne said, "My life has been filled with terrible misfortune, most of which never happened." Now there's a study that proves it. This study looked into how many of our imagined calamities never materialise. In this study, subjects were asked to write down their worries over an extended period of time and then identify which of their imagined misfortunes did not actually happen. Lo and behold, it turns out that 85% of what subjects worried about never happened. And with the 15% that did happen, 79% of subjects discovered either that they could handle the difficulty better than expected or that the difficulty taught them a lesson worth learning. This means that 97% of what you worry over is not much more than a fearful mind punishing you with exaggerations and misperceptions. I will link that article from the Huffington Post in the description of this video. So there it is. So often we, like Abram, worry about something that is simply not going to happen. Abram's fears turned out to back up the Huffington Post article. Pharaoh, believing Sarah to be Abram's sister, took her as his own. God inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh, who found out the truth of the matter and gave Sarai back to Abram. Abram's fears proved to be irrational. He was not killed. Not only that, his supposedly clever plan actually caused more harm than good. Although it might be easier said than done, we need to recognise when our fears are irrational, where we're worrying about a worst-case, many steps forward scenario. As we recognise this, we'll learn that these scenarios rarely, if ever, come true, and we'll be able to lean on that assurance next time we face something similar. Unfortunately, this is not the end of the matter for Abram. By Genesis 20, Abram is now Abraham and Sarai is now Sarah. This name change signified God's promise to Abraham that he would be, as the new name means, the father of a numerous offspring. That's how it's put in Gill's exposition of the entire Bible. Despite this amazing promise, Abraham finds himself falling into old habits. He moves to Gerar and once again pretends his wife is his sister. Once again, Sarah is taken, this time by the king Abimelech. God comes to Abimelech in a dream and warns him to return Abraham's wife. Abraham is questioned and admits in verse 11, "I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife." Once again, then, Abraham's worst fears were misplaced, as the king's response shows. It says in verse 14, "Then Abimelech brought sheep and cattle and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said," carries on in 15, "My land is before you, live wherever you like." Now, what is clear here is that Abraham did not learn from his experience in chapter 12 with Pharaoh. Despite God's covenant with him and his new name, he did the same thing once again, acting out of fear and creating an identical step-by-step series of fears. We're moving to Gerar, step 1. Step 2, men will want to take my wife Sarah as their own. Step 3, these men will conspire to kill me to take Sarah. So step 4, Sarah must pretend to be my sister. Can you relate? Do you find yourself time and time again following the same fear patterns, worrying about irrational and unrealistic hypothetical worst-case scenarios that never come true, scenarios where God has proven himself in the past, but you go back to being anxious again and again and again? Well, there is hope. One thing we can do is to remind ourselves of the many times God has helped us. I have a friend who calls me on the phone every Monday and Friday at 12 p.m. We have a Bible study together as well as a good chat. We've been doing this for around 9 months. Now, even though we don't speak in between to confirm the call, I know to expect the call on Mondays and Fridays at 12 o'clock. I have faith in the fact that he will make the call, and that faith is built on the proven track record that my friend is trustworthy to keep the commitment and the promises we've made. And of course, we can do the same with God. We can lean on our past experiences to help us face our present struggles. In a video by Tim and Kathy Keller, which I'll link in the description, Kathy talks about the tipping point of faith, a moment in our Christian walk where what we know about God, what we've experienced of God, should help us know we can trust his character. We can ask ourselves, is he loving? Is he wise? Is he good? And if we decide yes to these, Kathy says, then that's a settled issue. It forms a foundation for the rest of our lives, and we act completely differently to before we knew this to be true. When we have confidence in God's character, we decide we can trust God no matter what the circumstances. One of the problems here is we so quickly forget the past goodness of God in our lives, and one way around this is seen in the Bible through the creation of altars. In Joshua chapter 4, after God has parted the river Jordan and saved the Israelites from the Egyptians, look what happens. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you, and put them down at the place where you stay tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he'd appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever." In other words, God tells the Israelites to build altars, visual reminders of the goodness of God. Why? So they can be used as a reminder of God's goodness in the future. Now today we might not pick up stones and build an actual altar, but we can apply the same idea. Why not have a box on hand which you fill with notes every time God answers prayer? In times of anxiety, you can tip the box out and read all of the notes to encourage yourself with. If you're artistic, why not create a piece of art every time God answers prayer? Every time God takes you through something and gets you out the other side, build an altar, and you can look at it next time you're going through a time of anxiety. Well, I hope you found that useful. This whole channel will be studies on anxiety based on the Bible, so please do subscribe if you'd like to see more. It'll give me a good idea of if this is something that people will find useful.